Have you ever wondered how a simple idea makes that epic, winding journey to become the law of the land in the United States? I mean, it's a path that is just loaded with committees and debates and some really high-stakes votes. Okay, let's dive in and trace this wild road from just a concept all the way to a congressional act.
Right, so this is the big question for us today. And you got to understand, this isn't just a simple checklist. It's way more like an obstacle course. An idea has to survive all these different stages, and any single one of them could stop it completely dead in its tracks.
So every journey has a beginning, and for a law, it's right here, an idea. And this could come from anywhere, a regular citizen, a special interest group, or a member of Congress. It has to be formally written down. This is that magic moment. It goes from just being a thought to an actual piece of proposed legislation. And once it's written down, it gets a name, a code. You might see something like H.R. 1. So what does that mean? Well, H.R. tells you it started in the House of Representatives, and the number 1 just means it was the very first bill they introduced that session. Then it gets this formal summary of what it's trying to do, like to amend the Social Security Act. This is the moment it becomes real.
Okay, so here's the first huge rule you need to know. While literally anyone can write a bill, it absolutely must be sponsored and introduced by an actual member of Congress. And it doesn't just go to the whole House or Senate for a big debate right away. Nope. First, it gets sent to a small, specialized group of people called a committee.
And let me tell you, this is the first great filter. This is the gauntlet. Committees are where the real nitty-gritty work, and honestly, the real fighting happens. This is where experts dig into every little detail. They hold hearings, they change the bill, and it's also a legislative graveyard. This is where most bills are just quietly buried, never to be heard from again. Both the House and the Senate have their own separate committee systems, and they're all organized around specific topics, things like agriculture, the military, or finance. The House has more than 20 of these permanent or standing committees, while the Senate has over 16. These are the folks who get the first crack at any new bill.
Now you should know, not all committees are created equal. Oh no. In the House, a few of them hold an incredible amount of power. You've got the Ways and Means Committee, which handles all things taxes. The Budget Committee sets the overall spending plan. And the Appropriations Committee? They decide exactly where all that money is going to go. Basically, those 3 control the government's purse strings.
But maybe the most powerful committee of them all is the House Rules Committee. It's often called the traffic cop of the House. Think about this. Even if a bill passes another committee, the Rules Committee gets to decide if it even goes to the full House for a vote, when it gets voted on, and what the rules for debate are going to be. They are the ultimate gatekeeper.
All right, so let's say a bill is one of the very lucky few. It actually makes it out of committee. What happens next? Well, now it has to face a vote by the entire chamber. That's all 435 members of the House or all 100 members of the Senate.
And you've got to understand the process in each chamber is totally different. They're like different worlds. In the House, because it's so big, debate is super structured. It's time limited, all thanks to that Rules Committee we just talked about. And House members, they tend to be specialists. But the Senate, it's much smaller, it's a bit more collegial, and it allows for way more open and sometimes, unlimited debate. Senators tend to be generalists covering a whole bunch of issues. So no matter which chamber it's in, a bill usually just needs a simple majority to pass. That means 218 votes in the House, 51 in the Senate. But, and this is a big but, in the Senate there are procedural rules like the filibuster that often mean a bill actually needs a supermajority of 60 votes to move forward. So if a bill manages to clear this hurdle, its journey is still a long way from being over. Because here's the thing. Passing one chamber is only half the battle. Seriously, a bill that passes the House has to then go over to the Senate and survive the entire process all over again. Committee review, amendments, a floor vote, the whole shebang. And of course, the same is true for a bill that starts out in the Senate. Okay, so what happens if the House and Senate pass similar but not exactly identical versions of a bill? This happens all the time. Well, the solution is something called a conference committee. You get key members from both chambers, they all get together in a room, and they hammer out a single, unified version of the bill that hopefully they can all agree on. But wait, the work is still not done. This new compromise bill, this unified version, it has to go back to both the House and the Senate for one last up or down vote. No more amendments, no more changes. They either approve it exactly as it is, or the whole thing just dies right there. Only if both chambers pass this identical version can the bill finally move on to the president.
So after surviving committees and floor votes in both chambers, the bill finally leaves Congress. It travels down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House and lands right on the president's desk for the final decision. This is the last hurdle.
At this point, the president really has two main options. They can sign the bill, and at that moment it officially becomes the law of the land. Or they can veto it. That's a formal rejection, and they send it right back to Congress, usually with a note explaining why they're against it.
Now, a presidential veto is incredibly powerful. It stops most bills cold, but it's not necessarily the absolute end of the story. Congress has one last pretty dramatic move that it can make.
And that move, it all comes down to this number, 2/3. This isn't a simple majority. This is a supermajority, a much, much higher bar to clear than what was needed to pass the bill in the first place. So to make a bill into a law without the president's signature, something pretty extraordinary has to happen. You need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to vote to override that veto. This takes massive support from both parties, which is exactly why it is so difficult to do and why it happens very rarely.
And that brings our whole journey to a close. I mean, from the committee graveyard to the filibuster, from conference committees to the presidential veto, the path from an idea to a law is deliberately filled with choke points. Which leaves us with a final, really interesting question to think about. Is all this complexity a flaw in the system, or is it a feature? A feature designed to make sure that only the most well-thought-out and widely supported ideas actually become the law of the land.